Okay, look, hear me out. I really like Nano Breaker. It was suggested to me by ArmorWolf792 in the comments a few days back, and thank you my guy, because since then, I've gone on to devour this game in only a couple of sittings. Nano Breaker is exactly what I'm looking for in an obscure 6th generation game. It's Japanese, it's hack and slash, it's ultra violent, it's weird as hell, and holy shit, I think this game is gorgeous. Its visuals alone are worth the time that I spent playing it. It looks distinctly PS2 in every single way. This game for me is a perfect little nugget of bizarre PS2 weirdness, and its obscurity only intensifies those vibes. Finding gems like this are why I enjoy this little pastime of mine as much as I do. It's just so interesting to me to discover these surreal games that most people have forgotten about. And in Nano Breaker's case, I guess I understand why it was forgotten, mainly because it was reviewed horribly. IGN gave it a 4.5, and in the verdict of that review, the dude says that Nano Breaker is as plain an example of bad game design as we're going to get. Now, I'm not saying that Nano Breaker is a masterpiece or anything. Really, what I'm saying is that its art style and visual design are awesome, and that the other aspects of the game, like its combat, are actually pretty decent, at least relative to the standards of the time period that the game came out in, which was 2005. To this day, though, I still think that Nano Breaker is a solid hack and slash game, and I hardly think it deserved the low score that IGN gave it. I think that this game is more of a quintessential example of a 7 out of 10, 7.5 maybe even. So this game was made by the infamous Konami, the bad guys of the gaming industry and the killers of the greatest horror franchise ever made. But at this time, in 2004, Konami was home to some great developers, and one of them being Koji Igarashi, or possibly better known, at the time at least, as IGA, or IGA, or I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it. This lovable fellow here was the one that produced Nano Breaker, and he's probably best known for his work as assistant director, programmer, and scenario writer on Symphony of the Night, which is arguably the best Castlevania game, and even more arguably solidified the idea of the Metroidvania genre. In 2004, Igarashi was coming hot off the heels of producing Castlevania Lament of Innocence, which is also a third-person hack-and-slash game which feels very similar to Nano Breaker in that way. So I imagine he took what he learned from that experience and applied it here. The gameplay here is honestly not terrible, which is sometimes the case for hack-and-slash games of this era. Everything here is pretty straightforward. You've got your horizontal attacks and your vertical attacks, and you can unlock different combos that all give different, unique, and cool-looking attack animations. These combos work exactly like how strings from fighting games work, which for me felt very intuitive and natural. So the actual feel of attacking stuff and performing attacks feels pretty fluid, in my opinion. I can see how somebody may be frustrated by the fact that if you say do square, triangle, square, it locks you into that specific string animation because you pressed all those buttons very fast and in a certain order. And being stuck in that animation can definitely leave you susceptible to multiple different attacks from different enemies, but personally I didn't find that to be a problem because that's kind of the name of the game when it comes to action games, right? It's definitely par for the course. There's also this thing called Booster that you use, and it uses up this blue gauge under the HP bar here, and these are relatively useful tools, like one where you have flying energy balls that, fly all around you and hurt enemies. There's one that gives you super armor during your attack frames, and then there's even an AoE attack, of course. Oh yeah, and there's this, at least fairly unique for the time, mechanic that's a grapple. I thought this was kind of neat because this game does predate Nero's Devilbringer in Devil May Cry 4, which is definitely one of my favorite mechanics in the Devil May Cry series. Oh yes, I also can't forget to mention that there's an actual, real deal dodge mechanic. For me, it's so important for an action game to have some sort of reliable, consistent defensive option, and that's once again something that isn't super common in hack and slash games from this time period, so it's definitely appreciated here. But what really ties this game's combat all together, what really makes it fun for me, is its visuals. It's the feedback that the enemies give you when you hit them. There are giant fountains of blood that fly everywhere and splatter all over the environment. The way limbs get chopped off according to whether or not you performed a vertical strike or a horizontal strike. The way that they crawl on the ground after you chopped off their legs, or how when they're cut in half, their corpses just twitch and squirt out blood until exploding in a poof of purple smoke. For example, look at what happens when I chop off this big chunk of this guy's body right here. Now that is a grade A piece of visual surrealness right there. I'll tell you, I've never seen anything so gorgeously freakish in all my days. Another thing that's kind of fun is you can actually even change the color of the blood, and you have a lot of different types of options, going from the entire color wheel to light and dark versions of it, and you even get to do rainbow. The way that these enemies die is what makes this combat system fun to me. The combos are exciting to unlock and try out because they result in different deaths for these hordes of enemies. Like this axe attack that you get fairly early into the game, it chops guys in half. And then later in the game you unlock this hammer attack that smashes these enemies in a spectacularly gory way. Just smears them into the concrete. All the different types of animations for these enemies and the variety of them, for me, is pretty impressive. It's little details like this that can take a mediocre combat system and heighten it into a really solid one. Or the very least, one that's not boring. The gameplay is kept not boring in a few different ways as well, like when the game puts you in situations that have a bit more going on than just chopping everyone on screen. Like there's this conveyor belt part where if you stand still you'll get squished, and stuff like this is small, but it's just enough to keep me not bored. Oh, and most importantly, the bosses in Nano Breaker are excellent. These bosses are all pretty fun to fight because they kind of have little unique ways to go about actually defeating them. Like this boss here where you need to do your grapple thing to find this turtle. If you grapple the wrong thing, then it makes these energy balls more powerful. Or one of my favorite bosses in the game, this giant tank thing. You have to chop away these different parts of the machine that all do different types of attacks. Once you get further and further in the fight and you start chopping down its health even more, these pieces of the tank explode, revealing a gigantic, organic looking nanomachine creature underneath its armor shell. You then have to hack away at the center of it while avoiding its giant beam. Damn, this just looks so cool to me. As far as other parts of the gameplay go, besides the combat specifically, there's also some platforming puzzles that are, I thought they were pretty decent. Look, they're not exceedingly fun, but they are a good way to break up the gameplay just a little bit. And honestly, at the time of one big platforming part, when it happens, it's used kind of like the calm before the storm, as it's in a late game part where climbing to the top of the tower is where you're going to fight the big bad guy of the whole story. So I think it services its vibe pretty well, at least in the instance that it exists in. So the only actually bad thing that I think this game does, at least as far as its gameplay, is it has the notorious escort missions. It was a poison on the action game genre in the early to mid 2000s. Here in Nano Breaker, this is the worst type of escort mission too. It's the type where you lose if the character you're protecting dies. You can also damage her by accident, which means you can't slash guys that are right next to her, but, coincidentally, the guys who are right next to her are the ones that are attacking and doing damage to her. So when I played it, I figured, well, shit, that kind of sucks. I should probably step back and then grapple them from afar. Well, guess what? You can actually grapple her too. And there's no way of really targeting anything specific in this game, so it just kind of decides what you grapple whenever it wants. It was annoying, tedious, and stupid, but overall, the parts were pretty short, and it was pretty negligible to me, at least in the grand scheme of things. Because, I get ultimately they really weren't very difficult, so they were kind of a breeze. Nano Breaker's actual story is a box of cliches and tropes all smashed together to make probably one of the more generic stories I've sat through in a while. It's fun, though, in that way. It's absolutely, admittedly, kind of fun for me to just giggle at all the cliched plot points and generic twists. Like, there's the character you play as, and, well, he's got this lovable, goofy-looking face in the CGI cutscenes that I had a hard time not laughing at. His name is Jake, and then there's his rival, his Virgil, in a sense, a similar cyborg weapon man to antagonize our main hero, and his name is Keith.
Long time no see, Jake.
Keith.
And I really like how these super cyborg badasses, these unreal killing machines, are just named Jake and Keith. That's fun. Oh yeah, and Steve Bloom plays Keith, which is always cool to see, and he puts on a great performance as always.
A weapon's worth is measured by power. I hate myself for losing to someone as soft as you.
The game is mostly serious overall, with a little bit of unintentional comedy here and there, except for this one part at the very, very end, which I'm about to kind of spoil, so get ready.
Where did this car come from?
I've had this baby for a long time. Kept her running like a dream, too. Just sit back and relax.
It's your driving that worries me, not your maintenance skills.
Let me show you a few tricks. So, what do you think, huh? Not too shabby for an old guy.
I forgot to mention one thing.
What's that?
Bridge up ahead? It's gone.
If the whole game was kind of more tongue-in-cheek like this, or maybe even more unabashedly stupid, I think I would have enjoyed the story a lot more. All that being said, though, this game's world and characters are still fairly interesting to me solely because of how they're designed. This is kind of what I've been saying this whole time. This game's true strength is its visuals. A big reason as to why I play video games is because of the visuals. It's a big reason as to why I watch movies, read manga, watch anime. I like that stuff. I love character designs, well-crafted environments, surreal creatures, and just overall dense and weird aesthetics. I like immersing myself in strange, uncanny worlds and being assaulted with intense and unique images. Nano Breaker gives me all that. This game is just a feast for the eyes, and I love all of particularly these enemy designs. The pukey ones that I showed earlier are my favorite, but look at these fat guys. And then check out this eyeball with legs thing. It's just kind of off-putting in the best kind of way. The environments all look perfectly dilapidated and overgrown with these malicious nanomachines. And these areas that you play through are all kind of given this calm vibe through this game's honestly pretty solid music. Like, there's this song that plays amidst all of this carnage happening on screen. I feel like it kind of sets this tone that feels, I don't know, nihilistic or at least indifferent to the violence, which effectively, and I think even maybe purposefully, mirrors the attitude and outlook of the main character, or at least how we're supposed to perceive him at first, till it's revealed later that he's actually a super good guy with a big heart this whole time. But he definitely has this anti-hero, I don't care about all the death around me type of aura about him, and I think that having this calm, almost JRPG town-esque music happening during blood flying everywhere kind of, you know, adds to that tone, or at least that type of character that they're trying to go for. I just overall love the look of these PS2 graphics. And actually, I think that the better rendered, more detailed CGI cutscenes really pale in comparison to these wonderfully pixelated and jagged edges during the actual gameplay. Oh, look at the polygons. Just gaze at these beautiful pixels. Now, I should say that all the footage that you're seeing on screen was from an emulator, so it wasn't actually being displayed on a CRT. So on a proper tube TV, the visuals would look absolutely less jagged and a bit smoother, albeit blurrier. But I don't know, I actually think that being able to see every single pixel only kind of services its dirty cyberpunk-esque vibe. I don't know. Maybe I'm going far and beyond to make excuses for this game. Look, I'm just trying to explain how I feel about it, alright? Nano Breaker looks like taking a bitter tap of acid in a techno horror wasteland. It's so interestingly, artistically directed. Everything is this weird combo of organic monsters combined with this glowing techno trash. It's an ultra-violent, freakishly bizarre experience in a dystopian, violent, super sci-fi tech world. I'm really, really into it. Nano Breaker has its own flavor, a feel that's unique to itself. No other game looks like Nano Breaker. Its aesthetic is one of a kind. Sure, people have done like weird sci-fi worlds with cyborg main protagonists a bunch of times, but nobody's done it quite like Nano Breaker. Nano Breaker has its own flavor, a feel that's unique to itself. No other game looks like Nano Breaker. Its aesthetic is one of a kind. Hey, thanks for watching all the way through to the end. You are a gracious and even possibly miraculous person. You're also insane, and you just wasted your time. But you know, hey, I really appreciate you wasting it here. Seriously though, thank you very much. Alrighty, thanks for watching. Later.